So today's topic is near and dear to me because of the fact that, like many of you, the IDE, which stands for Integrated Development Environment, is where I spend most of my time when developing an access solution for my clients, right? I spent a lot of time in there. And boy, does it show its age. I mean, it's just really, really old compared to more modern interfaces that you find with .NET and even with SQL Server Management Studio, right? I mean, the SQL Server Management Studio is just a real joy to work with. I do a lot of that because we're known worldwide as experts in the field of access with SQL Server. So a lot of our projects have to deal with SQL Server, and therefore we have to become SQL Server quasi-developers. I always tell people I'm an expert in access with SQL, not an expert in SQL Server, right? But, you know, it's just a real shame. Now, there's a lot of add-ins that you can put in there. One of my favorite add-ins before it got upgraded was MC Tools, Mary Zebra Tools. And when it was free, boy, I just love that add-in. It did so many of the good things I loved. I can make procedures favorite some procedures. I can store code templates. It was a real joy. But the new version, you got to pay for it, and then it took away some of the features that I was looking for. And the searching capabilities was really great. I mean, searching with the VBE Integrated Development Environment, it just sucks. It wasn't as good as MC Tools. Let me go ahead and start Access here. I think it's only right that I bring up the IDE since we're talking about it. Now, I don't know about you guys, but there's several ways to get to the IDE once you launch the Access file. My favorite way is with Control-G, and that opens the IDE right away. And let me just see, this is the demo we do with new clients. For some reason now this thing is not working for me, Control-G. Let me start it up with my bypassing. Let me close it and open it up again. But Control-G, as in G as in Giorgio, that takes you to the IDE immediate window, right? And then from there, you can click on the code above. Is there another shortcut I may not be aware of? I'm a keyboard warrior, right? So I really like these shortcuts. To me, the other day, if you have a form open, right? So let's say, for example, I got my desktop form here. And then you can go into the design menu here and then view code. You're in the design menu and then view code, right? So that's one way. Again, I'm a keyboard warrior, so I like the Control-G method. With the Control-G, go ahead.
There's Alt F11, isn't there?
Alt F11, okay.
I think.
Let's see, let's try that here. Let me do Alt F11. Alt F11. Yeah, Alt F11 does the same thing. I don't know. I thought Control-G is easier to remember, and I just do that. But Control-G does take you to the immediate window. So, you know, if you want to search code, then you got to click up here to search the code, whereas Alt F11 takes you straight to the code. The immediate window is probably one of my favorite aspects of this IDE because you can ask questions, right? So, say, for example, how much is 2 times 2? And then it'll reply back, right? So you can do math questions here. You can run functions, right? So I can say, okay, what is today's date minus 1? And I do that so I can test code snippets that are not variable independent outside procedure. Once I have a stop in the procedure, I can then go ahead and do manipulations such as assign values to variables and change the values of variables and do all kinds of great things to test things out. One of the things that frustrates me in the past was sometimes I'll get a SQL statement. We write a lot of SQL statements in our code. One of the reasons why is because we don't want to create a query object and then base the form on the query object, because then the user may be able to bypass our startup procedures and change the query, and before you know it, they've broken my form because they changed the query regardless for whatever reason, right? So we do a lot of SQL code in that code, and so what I'll do is, I'll say, okay, what is the value of str SQL? That's our usual SQL statement, and it'll return back select star from, right, from this table, and then where, right, and so forth. So one of the things that I'm thinking about writing is a function that will launch a query window and automatically take me to SQL view and then paste that SQL code in there. So I'm thinking about doing that. I think I had done that once at one point. I don't remember now what I did with it. But one of the problems when writing SQL code, this is my first suggestion, and I know, Georgia, you submitted a couple of suggestions. We're going to get to those in a second here, but one of my all-time favorite things with SQL Server Management Studio is you can type the table name and then do dot and get Intellisense, right?
Yeah.
So if I had a table called TBL customers, right, I can type TBL customers dot and then customer ID. And that helps you tremendously because of the fact that otherwise you have to go either in the front end, right, because I don't know all of my table fields and I don't want to guess if I don't know for sure. Yeah, customer ID is probably, that's a no-brainer, but there may be other fields in that table. So I got to come back to the front end, bring up the table, right, double-click on it and say, oh, yes, it's company type ID or company type, and then come back to my code and then finish writing my SQL statement, right? So it's a real pain, a real productivity problem. So one of the things that I'm going to suggest, and overhauling the IDE when it comes to Access, is to have that same Intellisense so that as I write SQL code, so let me just go ahead and start a new module here. And I've been a big no, I should always have option explicit on mine. So I apologize for that. So I'm going to go ahead and do a public test for SQL. Public sub test SQL. And then I usually do strSQL as a string. Then I'm ready to build my SQL statement, right? So I'll say, okay, select. And then usually in SQL Server Master, I do the from, so I can get that Intellisense, right? Because then in SQL Server Master Studio, as I start typing customer ID, it flows to the top. So maybe what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and start the SQL Server Master Studio to illustrate this concept real quick. Although a lot of you who use SQL Server Management Studio, SSMS, I'm sure, are quite familiar with it. Yeah, my computer is really acting up today. Let me just go ahead and tell Cortana. Hey, Cortana. Open SQL Server Management Studio. All right, thank you for that. It's opening it on the other window. So as soon as it's done opening, we'll bring it over to this one. So I rarely use Cortana. One of my favorite commands of Cortana is, one reason I rarely use it is because of the fact that it's not really good as Alexa. Alexa's got me spoiled. Right? And again, sometimes I'm away from my computer and I shout at the computer, hey Cortana, lock my computer, and I don't have to walk up to it and it'll lock it automatically for me. All right, so, just heard me there. So, so I'll go ahead, let's go ahead and start a new query here. Control N for new query, again, keyboard warrior, I am. And then I'll say select, right? And then I'll do the from TBL customers, right? And you get this Intellisense, right? Well, in this case, it's TBL companies. And now that I've selected my front table, and I can come in here and I can say, okay, I can start typing the field names, which I thought was pretty neat. So I'd love to see that from an IDE standpoint. So that's one of the things I'll be submitting to the user voice. Now, I didn't know this until recently, and that is the IDE is governed by a completely different group than the Access team. And the person who was kind enough to point out to me was, let me just bring him, let's go into my website here. You mentioned to me that in a post I did. Let's see here. Here. So CW, that's all I have is Carl Wells net. He was telling me that when you go to the Access User Voice, overhaul their facility, what they say is, so this is related to the VBA editorship and the Office developers. So I'm going to post this link to the Office developers here, and I'm going to click on Post a New Idea. And there, I encourage you to use this. I mean, something under Santaya, they're really putting an effort into this, right, and listening to what people say. Why are you drooling over there, George? You say you're drooling. Okay. I guess George's guy's mic muted and can't answer right away. So one of the things that I would love you guys to do is I just pasted the link to the Office VBE, right? Office Developer User Voice. And all these great ideas, we need to post them on here and be able to vote upon them and campaign for them, right? That's one of the things that I always encourage. Like, for example, the number one here has got 121 votes. Support hidden from address lists, enable property and groups. Well, that's an Office 365 group, so I don't know why this thing is even here, to tell you the truth. If we're talking about the Office, well, maybe they want to bring this feature right to Office Dev. Add a property to read write, Command G. Not a lot. I mean, I did an Access User Voice, and I remember I think I got up to 600 votes. So we can make a difference, right? And so I like to do is, so that's one of the things I like to see in the IDE. Let me go back to the IDE. One of the other things IDE is I like to be able to collapse these procedures, just like you can with SQL Server Management Studio. Have the ability to collapse procedures. And then the other aspect is, oh, the crab. Thank you, George. I mentioned crab and it was doing that. One of the things that, we got next month, March 4th, I'll be seeing George at the MVP Summit, the once-a-year shindig where I go back to recharge my batteries at the mothership. That's the joke around the office, right? All the MVPs are invited to register to the summit. You have to get your butt there, then they cover all the expenses, hotel, food, and so forth. And so one of the things that I love about the experience is, number one, of course, I get to meet with the other MVPs in the program, and we usually arrive there Sunday afternoon, and Sunday night we're going out to a pub somewhere. We meet for dinner and commiserate. In the old days, we were commiserating, not so much these days, because I really love the new Access team they have in place. I've talked about that before. And then the other thing I love about it is the fact that we usually pick out a night where we where we head out and we do like a crab. It's called a crab pot. Crab pot out in Seattle. So let me just search here. And so here, Ben, crab pot, Seattle. Here we go. Ben, Clothier, myself, Luke, who originally started that along with the German guys. And this is where I got my idea, by the way, because they just pour the stuff on your table, right? And so we'll just order multiple crab pots, and we got this all figured out where we order our first crab pot, and then we won't order a second one until they deliver the first one, and then by the time we finish the first one, the second one's ready, and we'll order different flavors, cajun, lemon pepper. Oh my goodness. So anyway, one of the things about the Access MVP conference is we get to talk about ideas for the Access product, right? And I can't really dive into the details of how we do that, but there's a very interesting way how we do about new ideas I love. But I can't tell you anything about that. But it's like a community effort, right, where we talk about ideas for Access. And the team gets our feedback. And we do provide a lot of feedback to the Access team. And they love these days because you have to figure these guys are cooped up in Seattle. Now, recently, that's changed a little bit. I do see a team participating. For example, last year they were at Access Dev in Vienna, which I was able to present last year, and this year I'm going again in April. And they were also at the Oregon. They were recently team rep to the POG conference, which is, by the way, if you haven't registered, they still have openings, which is a rarity. I do encourage you guys to register if you're on the border. Just a wonderful weekend event. And so the team does love that feedback. And so, it's important that they hear that from us, right? What are customers saying? Because they're cooped up. And gosh, I wish I could show you some of the stuff that's happened in years past. But they're cooped up in Seattle. They don't have much exposure to the small-time clients, right? They're talking to the big boys, right? The Accessors of the world, and because they're getting that feedback from other product groups at Microsoft that dealing direct from the sales force. They're not talking to the mom and pop groups, but they have, and they have been now. This newer team has been reaching out to customers through the MVPs. Like, for example, they came to Chicago, visited with my customers, and got an insight. And then they've done that with other MVPs. And so what they've done is, if you go to the Access blog, if you haven't been there, it's really been. There's really two of them, right? There's this one, which I believe is the official Office blog, and there's very little control they have over this. It used to be this was run by the Access team, not anymore. And so you'll see some articles that I've written out here. George Hepworth, Ben Cloutier in the old days, not anymore. And then you've got the Access blog from the Microsoft Tech community, which the Microsoft team does have a control over, right? And that's where you see these customer stories, and they love these customer stories. This is the Ignite event that I've talked to you guys about in the past. Look at that, 2,000 people. That's good. I've seen this. This is another very successful story. So if you got, look at this, 4,000. Okay. So if you do have an Access store, a customer story, please reach out to either George or myself, and then we'll make the introduction to somebody in the Access team, because they just love hearing about this, right? So and then we can submit blog articles for consideration for the Access team, and they'll post it on here for us as well. And I haven't been blogging as much as I'd like to. Lately, I've been working on more and more projects, and not only am I responsible for the sales team here at IT Impact, I also have more and more projects myself. I'm having a hell of a time lately finding great developers I can hire at IT Impact, mainly for two reasons. Number one, you can't go to university and learn Access, and number two, sometimes I come across some talent that just not 100% there. We do a lot of SQL Server work, so the ideal candidate is somebody who's got SQL Server work and Access. Anyway, I don't want to be sidetracked here, but that's the two features I talked about, right, which is the collapsible procedures. The Intellisense for tables will go a long way, making us more productive. An improved search capability also would be nice, where it lists all the search results. And gosh, in SQL Server Master Studio, you have templates, right, that you can implement. So for store procedure, so I can when I go create a new store procedure, I can pick a template I want to use for that. It'd be nice if we can have templates as well here in the IDE. So I'm not aware, maybe somebody does, I'm not aware of any templates that you can add on here or you can use with the product. You go here in options. You can do some things here, but there's no templating at all. Yeah, rudimentary coloring. I've done that in the past because at some point I wasn't treating myself well, and my sugar was spiked, and my eyes were going really bad, and I was going through a real dark period in my life. I since lost 40 pounds, and I'm doing much better, but I couldn't stand this white background, and so I switched it to a black background with blue. And the nice thing about that is I can give it different colors. You notice that This is like a blue, and then when I highlight, there's white and blue. You can change all those aspects by going into the options there. All right. George, why are you saying excellent? Excellent to what? The change in the colors? Oh, they lost the 30 pounds. Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that. I still haven't caught up with George. If you knew George back in the old days and you see George now, you got half George now, because that's literally, he's probably lost half of his body mass. He's really a lean, mean running machine now. So he was an inspiration for me. A year ago, I saw him, and we started talking about diets and walking, and I joined his walking club on Facebook, and I've hired a trainer, and I've eaten better choices. And now I'm on a fasting diet. One of these days, I'll talk to you about how that's working out for me. But those are the three things, right, I'd like to see: code templates, collapsible procedures, Intellisense for tables. Now, George, and I'm going to kill his name here, Rovelli. Is it Rovelli or Rovelli? Because I like to roll the O's. He asked we email me in LinkedIn some suggestions that he's had. Now, Giorgio, if you know Giorgio, he's been with us since the beginning with AccessUserGroup, and from Italy. Now he's in Jamaica today. So he took time out of his busy schedule in Jamaica to join us tonight, which I appreciate. He sent me an email here, and he sent me a couple of things here that I'd like to share with the group. Well, improve SQL editor and the query builder, right? The SQL editor and the query builder, the same thing, right? If we could have Intellisense as we're building queries, because honestly, this thing is it just sucks. I'm going to go back to Access here. I'm going to start a new query, create query design. It's not technically the IDE, right? But when you switch to SQL view, you can't add tables, right? There's no Intellisense. You have to pretty much copy and paste. It's not, I don't think you have. Let me just test from, I'm going to say, drag this table over. I don't think that'll work, but we'll see. No, so you can't. In SQL Server Management Studio, you can do that, right? So if you go in SSMS, I can just as easily drag a table to this thing, and it'll work, right? So that's pretty neat. And then also you can do the same thing for fields. Let's see, TBO contracts. Let me just tell this guy I'm in a meeting. You can do the same thing for the fields themselves, right? So here I can expand, and then the columns, and just drag a field over to my statement there. All right, so yeah, the SQL editor, so that really does. But more importantly, if you have an idea for the SQL editor, you really need to say, okay, the SQL editor sucks, but what is it that you want the SQL editor to do? Like in my case, it would be great if I can drag and drop fields, or if I can, or table names, right? At least table names, that would be nice. And then have the Intellisense there that will show me the red underscore wiggly line so that I can see if there's an issue with my SQL coding. Well, somebody asked here, Georgia, again, would making Access fully object-oriented help, or is VBA good enough? Look, $5 license. Okay, so let's answer a couple of things. You guys are typing these questions fast and furious here. So, by the way, you got 10 people on the conference so far. That's great. So Georgia says, if you look at the comments, and if you don't know how to pull up the comments, please let me know. But there's an icon there that you can see. So I'm going to bring this up here over here. If you want to bring up the comments, just click on this little icon here, and it'll show you the comments that people have been typing. So here, Giorgio has mentioned about, let's see here, I just saw it, with making Access fully object-oriented. Look, if we can make Access fully object-oriented, that's always going to be a good thing, right? If we can make it fully object-oriented. I mean, it's the way it is now. And sometimes I struggle understanding the deep object model that Access is. And I'll give you, for instance, several months ago, I gave you guys a free download to a project I created where you can spawn forms or forms. You guys remember that chat we had? Form spawning? Well, let's see here. Let me go to presentations. And, oh my goodness, this form spawning. So I had this link. Well, I guess it's not there anymore. I had this example where it would allow you to, I think I moved it over to my other code base, but basically I was using a class and I was using a collection object in order to obfuscate the issues with form spawning, and that is it's really hard to, it's really easy to collapse all your forms and destroy all of them if you're not careful. And so, and I just recently finished a major project for a client out in Minnesota where I implemented form spawning on an existing product. And, if I had to do it again, I probably wouldn't do it because that thing took me forever. And that's one of the reasons I wrote that code in my blog post that Giorgio was referring to earlier, how to search for references in all queries. Form record source. You can modify it also to form record sources or controls, right? Because when you go to form spawning, let's say, for example, and this is one of the reasons why George said, why this is important. Well, when you go to form spawning, now you have the same object in memory, right? So let's say, for example, you have a form. Like if I come over here and I go to forms and have this form 1, and I want to spawn form 1, right? I'm actually creating objects in memory of this object, right? So everything in Access, for the most part, is objects, right? You got properties and methods, but the fields are objects, the tables are objects, the forms are objects. But I can spawn this form 1 in memory and make it of multiple copies. But what the problem is, it's still form 1, right? And so when I go do forms.count, right? If I do forms.count, right? And I got 4 of them. It'll say you got 4 forms, and I go, okay, what is the name of form 1? That name, it returns the same. I don't have form loaded, but let me just go ahead and put this in design view. All right, so here I've got 4 of them, right? They're all based on form 1, right? So form 0 desktop, form 1 is form 1, right? Well, if I replicated form 1 4 times and I go to form 2, it's always going to say form 1. So now you can't use reference, right? So if, for example, if you pop a form from one of these forms where the prior developer student is popping the form to do an operation, he will refer back to the original form. Well, when you only had one of them, that was no big deal. But now that you have multiple copies in memory, I had to resort to temp bars. And actually, this is a topic I'll be talking about in Vienna. I've been asked to talk about difficult projects that I've encountered. And I'm going to devote significant time and attention to this topic in the Vienna conference in April, which I don't know, Georgia, if you'll be able to join us or not, being that you're in the same continent. Maybe it'd be great to have you there, buddy. All right. So, yeah, can Access be more object-oriented? Yes. Oh, and the whole reason I mentioned all that, form spawning, was because then I'm having an issue with my code, and I had to redo that tool, by the way. I had to redo that code, and by the Ben, says, Ben, can you help me out here? And God bless Ben Cloutier, because, I mean, the man is brilliant. I mean, I can't stand on it. I mean, I just don't reach his shoulders in terms of the knowledge and depth he has about Access. And he goes and he starts an instance manager, and he creates a new class, and he engineers the hell out of it in order to future-proof it, to bug-proof it. And he solved my problem, and to this day, I'm still having difficulty understanding how he manages all the objects in memory with the instance manager and instances, and oh my goodness, and there's so much you can do. I mean, it just proves that the product itself is mature, and you can do a lot of things with it. But boy, even an expert like myself, I sometimes scratch my head these days. All right, I'm just going to go over these comments here. So, all right, so we talked about that. Yeah, XSMS, I'd love to be able to link that in there. All right, so one of the things is, okay, so is this the right, is that the right link? I think you submitted another link after that. Here it is. Okay, so this thing, Stop Squinting on Your SQL, is the Microsoft Act allows. I have not used this, so I can't tell you if this works or not. And a lot of these products, they give you a free, as an MVP, they give you a free license. So that's probably the first thing I would do is say, hey, can I get a free license, right? In exchange, they want you to blog about it and so forth.
I won't write SQL without it anymore.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So let me take a look at this here.
It does the same colorizing, the indenting. It's got what's called a formatter.
Wow, this is pretty neat, George. You've been holding out on me. Who created this? Do you know the guy who's behind this?
Not off the top of my head.
All right. Well, that's good to know. I mean, look, if it's good enough for George, it's good enough for me. So please consider using this. But I like it already because I got the find replace right up here. And so this is another example how the IDE is so great, right? Because what happens is you can become an IDE developer and implement custom interfaces like you see here, right? And as long as you have a deep knowledge of the IDE and the object model for IDE, there's really nothing you can't do. Editing full screen. Now, does this have Intellisense, George? For tables and fields? I do see like an orders.ship name. George, you know if this has Intellisense?
Sorry, my mouse stopped responding. I don't think in the version that I have does have Intellisense, but I'm trying to remember if he was actually working on that. I don't think it is in this.
All right. So he's got other things on here. Field
Well,
Effect LLC.
I know that he had some new versions. But,
all right.
Yeah, that was his name. There was Russo. His last name is Russo. Yeah, $4.99. Yeah,
okay.
That's the Russo. That's him.
That's the Russo. Is this guy? Do you know? Is he an MVP or what is his deal?
I don't know. Carl Donabauer.
Yeah, he's in Europe then.
Yeah. Well, I don't know where the guy is, but Carl's the one who turned me on to it.
Oh, good. Save, find, replace, Control Q. Well, I love this. I can do comments.
Yeah. Just like in SSMF.
Yeah. Create a pesto query. The pesto query must have a quick drivers. You can usually download those on your new query. Click on the tab. Properties, the property dialog box. Okay. All right. Creating these strings are a pain in the ass, and so we have a builder product that I'm also going to be talking about in Vienna. We internally use a builder, and it builds these connection streams for us. But boy, it can take you a while to get the right one. All right. So thank you very much for that, George. Appreciate that. I'm going to definitely look into that. MC tools I've used in the past. Looks like Greg. So okay. One of the things that Giorgio, I thought I answered your question in the blog about his Templars and the case about spawning forms. I thought I did. Let me just go back to my blog here. Oh, I might have to bring it up again. Let me see here. Which meant the reference to the form would not work since there would be multiple copies of the form, memory each displaying a different record. I used temp bars. All right, thanks, Juan. I accuracy using temp bars to identify references. I guess that wasn't enough. All right, so again, let's go back to my example. If you have 5 copies of the form in memory, right? Using forms, there's several ways you can address a form, right? In your forms, right? There's several ways. I can use the The right way should be the name of the form, FRM desktop. And I always, when I teach, I always tell my students, if you can name it, then you know you got it right. So, for example, if I do the .name and I get the name back, that's why I know it right. Now, or you can use the ordinal position of the forms. Now, you don't want to program with the ordinal position of forms because unless you're 100% sure what that form's ordinal position is, like in our case, we have a form that we use that we launch every time at the beginning. I know form 0 what's going to be. But that's not always going to be the case. So I hate the hard coding with the ordinal position. But if I know, for example, form 0.name, right, as I find desktop. But when you have several forms with the same name, that's the only drawback to spawning, right? When you have multiple copies of the same object in memory, you can no longer use your name to reference it because what happens is it'll go to the first one that says FRM desktop, and it'll just use that one. Well, that may not be one. Maybe I refer to one that's the third one, right? And unless I know the ordinal position, which sometimes I do have a function that replies back to the ordinal position, but the fact is that when I launch a pop-up form, because they have to dismiss the pop-up form in order to go back to the other application forms, I'll just, before I launch the pop-up, I add my temp bars, right? So I'll say, okay, temp bars. .add, all right, and I'll call it, for example, customer ID, right? So if I have an order form that's got multiple customer IDs, and then I'll say me.customer ID .value. You'll learn that with temp bars, when you're adding them, you got to put the .value property in there because otherwise it thinks you want to store an object in a temp bar, and that's not the case. You'll get an error message. So if you don't put in the .value, you'll get the error message. But now that I do that, then I do, okay, I got my temp bars. Now I can do command open, right? Right, form FRM modify customer name, right? Customer address, for example. Customer address. I don't know. I'm just ad-libbing here. Right? When I do that, I could supply, obviously I could supply the customer ID and the open arguments. But there are sometimes other things in this application was quite complex, dealing with medical claims, that the open arguments wouldn't be enough. And I kind of like temp bars better because you can use them within the query source of the form and the report. That's the only variable that you can use in the form's record source report source. So I use temp bars all the time. Love that. Love them a lot. And so I go by the temp bar route because in the past what would happen is that form, if you go back to the form, let me go back to my Access front end here. And I'm going to do estimate here. All right. And you can bring up the form here. I got a rule source here, right? And so I could use the temp bar here. Instead of hardcoding, I can say temp bars, right? And then I do tab and then bang. Customer ID, right? So I created a customer ID temp bar with the temp bars.add. Then I can do temp bars bang customer ID. And then when it launches, it's always going to launch with the right customer ID. So anyway, that's what I do that for. I won't save that. No. So I hope that clears it up for you, Georgia. All right, so any other ideas that you guys, I don't want to flood, right? So again, what I'm going to do is in the next couple of days here, I'm going to be suggesting a series of improvements to the IDE. I'm going to stick to my 4 basic improvements, and then I'm going to do a campaign. Because being an Access MVP, as you can imagine, I got lots of followers. I'm going to do a campaign for those features, and hopefully we can draw attention to that. Now, when you do a campaign against user voice, you always want to not just vote. I always encourage people to leave a comment, right? So if I come in here and I click on the idea, I always like to leave a comment, and I encourage you to do the same thing, not just vote, but leave a comment. Why is it important? Because one of the things that I did was I talked to the Access Project Program Manager, the top guy at the Access team, heads up the Access team. And I said, you know, we need a native SQL Server connector in Access. which is what I was proposing. It turns out that the official position of the SQL Server team is to use ODBC and SQL Native Client, and so they're never going to do that because of that. But the first thing he says, make your case why that's important. Mention examples of how customers use it. How does it help improve the customer experience? They're all about customer driven, right? So if I can make my case and say, look, I need Intellisense and VBA editor because I can avoid mistakes, I can produce more quality code, I can be more efficient, right? I gotta make my case as to why I need that for you, right? So this guy here, he wants this property back. Could you please return that property group so we can hide certain groups without, so this is good, right? He's explaining why he wants it back. All right. Why can't Access 2016 link to MDBS? Well, MDBS. MDBs. Oh, okay. MDB. Sorry. I know. I haven't tried that. I didn't know you couldn't do that. So I learned something there. You can't do that? I didn't know you can do that. I thought you could.
An old database.
No? All right. I thought you can do that. Well, I don't know. I don't know why you can't link to MDBs. I thought you could open MDB as well in X 2016. Maybe I'm wrong.
You cannot open.
Oh, wow. That's a real shame. Okay. Well, look, Access User Voice is a way to post that idea, and I don't know if you have done that.
If you can't open it, access.
That's interesting because I thought it would bring it up and you can change it.
No.
Yeah, George. Linda's saying that you can't open an MDB in Access.
To Access 2010.
Let's see what George says about that.
I don't think so. No, I get an error message.
Oh, okay. So that's something that you may want to consider, right? You may need to install the Jet engine on the computer. Have you tried doing the Jet installation of Jet?
I don't think. Yes.
Here, you can download Jet,
Right.
and then that's one of the things that I don't know if you guys know this, but when you use the SQL Server migration assistant
I will try.
to migrate an old database to SQL Server, you need to install the Jet engine.
Okay. Good. Oh,
Yeah, like the 2010. So if you install the 2010 on that PC, Linda, it may work. I've not tried this. See how that helps.
Work. And
But if you install the engine, right, it may be able to help you in terms of X 2016 recognizing it, because then it can call the engine on that local PC. And this is how I upload old databases using SQL Server Migration Assistant, by the way. I have to install this engine 2010 in order to get it to migrate to SQL Server.
Yeah.
All right. Any other ideas you guys can think of for the IDE? Again, what we want to do is going back to my original link URL, right? And that is, you want to be able to come here to the IDE, and I'm going to post this again in the Slack, the Skype channel here. And make sure you submit your idea for the IDE, Giorgio. Submit your idea. Let me know when you have that submitted so I can vote for it as well. It's working? Okay, good to hear.
Maybe,
All right.
maybe it got fixed.
Oh, maybe. You never know with the latest version. That's good.
Yeah.
So to summarize, the IDE is where we spend most of our time when we're coding, right? And we really would like to see a more improved user interference is not being maintained by the Access team, but rather the Office staff team. And they need to hear from us a lot more than just 121 volts. They need to be able to hear our pain as an Access community. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to submit my 4 suggestions and campaign them so that people can vote, leave comments. Anytime you vote, I encourage you to leave a comment, right? Always leave a comment when you vote. That always helps. Yeah, line numbering, that's good. Line numbering is good. You have to use MC Tools for that, or Luke's tools, FMS tools to add line numbering. So Greg, if that's something you want, make sure you submit that line numbering for the IDE. Why that's important? Because of the fact that when you report an error, you can use a line number in your error handling.
Right.
And then when the user tells you, well, there's a line error in line number 10, you can do that, right?
Sure.
All right, I'm glad you use Luke's tools, Greg. I use them too. Any other suggestions you guys have for the IDE you want to run by me, or any suggestions, ideas? There's so much that can be done to bring it up to speed. Now, one of the things that I hear from time to time is, well, they're not going to do the IDE because they want to use .NET and the Office extendability, right, to program Office applications. I have not gone down that road. I can't tell you if you can build robust apps using Office extension tools in a .NET environment. Has anybody here done that? And so what that happens is you have to have Visual Studio.NET installed, and then you have to use the Office extendability. Not sure if you can replicate everything we can do with VBA using that combo. I get the feeling that you can't. Otherwise, we all be .NET Studio developers, I believe. All right, so that's pretty much it. We're not going to have a meeting in March because the fact that I'll be hosting with George and the other MVP guys there. And at the summit, it promises to be an interesting summit. All these summits are interesting, but wow. And I don't know, George, if you registered this year, they don't auto-register you, so make sure you go in there and you register for the access sessions before they open it up to everybody else. And then we get our own discipline, priority over our own discipline, and then once they open it up to others. So sometimes I'll sneak out from an access session. I'll go see something on Power BI, for example, or we're getting a lot of information also on Power Apps, which is interesting. And by the way, you can now invoke store procedures from Power Apps, and I thought that was pretty neat. It's something that the community has been asking for a lot. And let me see if I can get you that link, that announcement. Oh, this views. Maybe I'm confusing myself. Maybe I'm talking about the views. Let's see here. Yeah, views. I'm sorry. That's what I meant to say, not Power Apps views. You can use SQL Server views in Power Apps. So that's something that's going to be really helpful, so that you're not stuck with. Not sure if they're going to go with store procedures yet. Let me see. I'm just search on store procedure. No store procedure support yet. I know I've been hearing comments that they have been working on that, so that's pretty neat. So not store procedures, but views. So keep your eye open for Power Apps, because the whole organization of Microsoft is behind this Power Apps initiative. It's just going to get better. No, we're not doing Power Apps here. One of the things that I was actually talking with a lead today was using Microsoft Forms to collect over the web, because he's got a large public-facing database that he wanted to use with Access. I think it was like 300 people, and they would all require usernames and passwords and to just do the survey. I said, no, you don't want to do that. You don't want to give 300 people your front end just so they can submit a survey after they've had service. You want to do a form, Microsoft form. So I was talking to them about that. And because we're going to be hosting their database in Azure under our Azure domain, those forms data can get posted to a table, and then from there they can get processed so people can submit surveys. So Microsoft Forms, if you haven't been looking at that, another neat feature that's come on board lately. Forms.office.com. I have not used this myself, but I know that I haven't used it as a developer, but I have used these forms. People, I fill out these forms, and the people at Microsoft recommend and send me sometimes forms, and I fill it out. So I thought that was pretty neat. Well, nobody's saying that the Power Apps is going to take over for web apps that what Microsoft Access is, because at this point, they're both immature technologies, right? I can't do a full lifecycle app in Power Apps, just like I couldn't do a full lifecycle app with Microsoft Web Apps. I know some people have tried and succeeded somewhat, but Power Apps does have the full might behind it from the whole company, whereas Microsoft Web App was only supported by the Access team. So I'll tell you that my Power Apps is just going to get better and better. Ben Clothier and Andy Tabez worked on a white paper on how to migrate web apps to Power Apps. And if you have any clients using web apps, it's quickly approaching a deadline. April of this year, you won't be able to use those web apps anymore unless you host it somewhere else. So you really want to alert your clients beforehand, before Microsoft closes the doors. A lot of people are panicking about that. Like always, they wait until the last minute to find a solution. I've seen fairly complex Access web apps, and they were all constantly, one of the things that I was hearing from the MVPs who were behind them, they were constantly breaking. Oh, I got to fix this issue or that issue. Oh, excuse me. It was constantly breaking. What do you want me to send to you, George? You want me to send you that study, that white paper that Ben and Andy worked on? Let's see if I can find that. Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't have any. I never embraced the AWAs, Access Web Apps, so I don't have any clients on there. But if I do find any kind of work like that, I'll definitely steer me away. All right. Any questions, comments, suggestions, criticisms before we wrap up? Again, don't forget in March we don't have a meeting, but I'll be back in April to talk about all the things I can talk about that I learned at the summit, which is 90% of the stuff I can't talk about, but the 10% I can. Definitely like to share with you guys in our April. I think in April, am I in Vienna the second week of April? Let me see. Giorgio, if you can, join us in Vienna, Access DevCon. That'd be great. Love to see you in person there, man. Talk to you. I think they have spaces still. April 7th. Okay, so as April 7th, going to be in that second week of, doggone it, am I going to miss another day with you guys? Let's see. April 7th. Yep. I'll be traveling through Budapest. I'll be in Budapest, so we're not going to be in April. So our next meeting would be in May. So we'll skip both March and April, and we'll be meeting back here in May. Can you join us for this, Giorgio? Or I don't know if you have the time. It'd be nice. It's Saturday and Sunday. Maybe you can. Yeah, I actually do have a customer who's using Light Switch. That's the only time I did it. They're a fairly complex web app, and I've been trying to get them to the new .NET version. Did you guys like this chat today? Always got to get feedback. All right, thanks, George. Put it big. Thank you, Greg. Greg says he loved it. All right. Thank you very much for the feedback. Well, that's about it for us, folks. I'm going to leave you with that idea again. Don't forget to submit your ideas. Send me an email once you submit it so I can upload it for you and leave a comment. And I look forward to seeing you guys back here in May. And we'll have lots to talk about. I'll be talking about the summit. I'll be talking about Access DevCon in Vienna. I'll be talking about my trip to Budapest. I'm excited about that, spending 4 days in Budapest. Budapest, by the way, if you don't know this, is composed of two cities, Buda and Pest. One is the mansions, old mansions, and rich people, and the other side is Pest, where everybody else lives at. So excited to be there 4 days to sample the cuisine and meet the people. Vienna is awesome too. I love going to Vienna. Vienna is what Germany would have been if it weren't bombed. If they didn't, the Allies hadn't bombed the shit out of it. A lot of the architecture in Vienna was spared because the British bombers couldn't reach that far to bomb them, right? So, all right. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. This is Juan Soto from Chicago signing off. We'll see you back here in May for our next Access with SQL Server meeting.